Many people claim to have actually seen UFOs at Area 51. But what have they seen? Just because it's unidentified doesn't necessarily mean it's an alien craft or something from outer space. Are there photographs or videotape of these strange flying objects? If there are, who has them? And why aren't they being viewed by the general public? What's going on there today? The astonishing answers are straight ahead. Prior to a series of TV interviews in 1988 and 89 with a man named Bob Lazar, Area 51 was just an obscure designation on old military maps where atomic bombs were occasionally touched off, in the interest of national security, of course. But in 1955, all of that changed. In that year, Lockheed desperately needed some place to test their latest super-secret aircraft, the U-2 spy plane. They turned to one of their chief test pilots, a man by the name of Tony Levere, to help them find a secluded spot within enough land to accommodate a very long runway. And with that, Area 51 became America's most secret new aircraft testing facility. But what else was going on there? The official U.S. government statement concerning Area 51 reads, "Neither the Air Force nor the Department of Defense owns or operates any location known as Area 51." Strictly speaking, that's true. And even though it was built by the CIA and used exclusively, so far as anyone knows, for government-related projects, it is operated by a private company and guarded by the Wackenhut private security force hired by that company. For over 30 years, except for a couple of ranchers, people generally ignored Rachel, Nevada, and the nearby Groom Lake facility. But there were other things going on that would give Bob Lazar's story instant credibility. A 1950 FBI memo from Agent Guy Huttell reported that he had been told by an Air Force investigator that 3 flying saucers had been recovered in the New Mexico desert. After all, the alien craft Lazar claimed he worked on had to come from someplace. So even before the complex at Area 51 was built, the seeds of one of the nation's most troublesome mysteries were already being planted. Today, hundreds of UFO watchers regularly drive out into the Nevada desert, across public land, and make their way up to the top of Whiteside Mountain or Freedom Ridge to try and get a glimpse of what they believe to be a captured vehicle from another world.
In one of our expeditions to Area 51, one of our affiliate members succeeded in taking rather remarkable footage of what appears to be a disc-shaped object over Groom Lake itself. It didn't behave like any conventional aircraft I've ever seen, no sound whatsoever. But the remarkable thing is that in other occasions we have seen the zigzag maneuvering of this type of aircraft, sometimes almost a 75-degree turn and sudden descension and ascension.
Could this really be a spacecraft from another planet that fell into human hands?
A consistent story that comes up from a lot of workers is that a craft was brought here around 1953 and that actual live aliens were brought here about that same time.
Of course, to this point, these claims are still just hearsay and rumor without more evidence to support them. Does such proof exist?
All the stories that float around this place are as much a mystery to workers as they are to us.
Do we know where all these stories of captured UFOs originated? And how did these craft get to Area 51?
Folks who run Area 51 won't admit that it exists. There was a federal lawsuit that was just tossed out in which they just wanted to know the name of the base, and they fought it tooth and nail and now don't have to reveal the name of it.
If you work in a secret area like this, like Area 51, your work is highly compartmentalized. You come to work on jets from Las Vegas with the window shades down. Upon arrival at Groom Lake, you are bussed in buses with blacked out windows directly to your workplace. You see nothing more than the hangar or the few buildings that you happen to work in.
That's the interesting dichotomy. The Russians can fly over it and take pictures. In fact, we've signed an open skies treaty that allows dozens of other nations to fly over and take all the pictures they want. But we, the people who foot the bills for the place, aren't supposed to know about it.
In 1988, a Russian satellite took a remarkable photograph over Area 51. Notice the object highlighted at the end of the runway. It's positioned at the same position as if it were about to take off.
Recently, several new photographs of Area 51 were released on the internet, perhaps in recognition of the fact that in spite of repeated denials, the public demand for an explanation of the mystery of Area 51 continues to grow every day.
This year we've seen two sets of images of Area 51 that were released. The first came from a Russian spy satellite that can see things as small as 6 feet across. The second came from a U.S. commercial satellite, and it can see things as small as 3 feet across. This gives us unprecedented clarity and detail of the activities at Area 51, and this is from a base that the U.S. government claims still does not exist.
The detail in these new satellite photographs is indeed startling, but the images raise more questions. Mainly, where's the activity? Note that in none of these photographs is there any indication of active personnel. If something is going on there, where is it taking place? Until now, Bob Lazar has been the only eyewitness to come forward and describe any kind of work being done on alien technology in Area 51. This man, David Adair, a respected and internationally recognized expert in space technology, agreed to speak out publicly for the first time about his own incredible experience at Area 51.
I built a rocket when I was 17 years old after building many rockets to get to this one that I built, and it was about 10 feet tall and it weighed about a ton, and the engine design was somewhat unique. It was an EFMC engine, electromagnetic fusion containment engine. There was a lot of help involved. There was congressional help, there was help from the military, and once we had the thing completed, we took it to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and then it was flown from there to White Sands, New Mexico. And then on June 20th, 1971, we launched this missile. The rocket was extremely fast, and it left out of the area, and a man named Arthur Rudolph was there who gave me coordinates to land it at a place called Groom Lake, Nevada. The rocket soft impacts up there with parachutes, and we fly from White Sands to Groom Lake, and when we get there, there are twin 10,000-foot runways, and it's a considerable Air Force base there. Once we land, when we got to the center hangar, we stopped, and then the entire floor of the hangar dropped out from under us, and it was an elevator. And we went down about 200 feet, and when we flushed out with the floor down there, the huge underground facility has a kind of a rainbow-type cascade-looking roof, and the walls cantered down on the sides, and on each side you have big work bays and workshops and offices. So we rode past a lot of these workshops, and then we got down a good ways, and then we stopped to a work bay that was on our left, and they got out, and the man opened the doors, and the doors slid back, and we went in this room where there was lights everywhere, but there was no shadows, kind of like a painter's booth. And they had this something sitting on a huge metal table, and it was covered up, and they pushed a button and the cables raised this big cover, and to my surprise, it's another EMFC engine, but it's about the size of a Greyhound bus. My engine and that one worked similarly, but the difference is mine was like a Model T, and this thing was more like a Lamborghini. It's incredibly sophisticated. I knew that this engine, it couldn't have been made in our technology level. This thing, as big as it was, there was no wires, and there was no screws, no rivets, no bolts, no weld lines, no seams, nothing. It looked like the entire thing grew. When you touch the engine, that's where it gets even better. And wherever your skin touches it, these really pretty swirl patterns would radiate from your skin through the hull, the metal, and it would descend out maybe 5-6 feet in all directions. So it was really interesting. It was reacting to touch. I just finally had enough. I knew that this engine didn't belong to them, and it couldn't, the way the thing was constructed. We had no capabilities at that time. Even today, we don't have that kind of technology. So I'm really angry. They're angry. They tell me to get down. So I'm coming down off the engine, and everywhere I'm touching the engine, it's no longer the blue-white swirls. It's now fiery red. Looks like orange-red colors shooting through the hull. And after seeing this, as I'm coming down, I stop, and I'm so amazed by this and watching it. As I calmed down, it went back slowly to the bluish white swirls. That's when I realized that this engine it's alive. It's picking up on not heat radiation, but thought waves. This thing is a symbiotic engine. It's capable of linking with the occupants of a craft.
They've had aircraft, you know, that, like saucer-shaped craft that crash into the ground because they don't understand what makes them tick. They're actually using some humans in a telepathic form through, like, the remote viewing project that they had, which was actually connected with Area 51, so that they could try and figure out how these craft were controlled, because it was all done with thought.
If this sounds too far-fetched, let me bring you to current events. In Princeton University right now, there's a professor there at Peer Labs named Dr. Robert John, who's working with the military on the X-29 fighter. And what he's doing is building a buffer system where the aircraft and the pilot, when he puts his helmet on, has leads stuck to his skull. And as he thinks, the plane reacts. And that is a symbiotic relationship between the pilot and the aircraft. When I finally got down off the engine and I got on the floor and I turned around and looked back at it, I realized that this engine was extraterrestrial in origin. It was outside of our technology of building something like that. And I realized I was standing on top of a huge piece of evidence everybody's looking for. And that made me more angry, because I realized that they were holding back on all this stuff. And no one has the right to do that.
The encounter ended with David being summarily and rudely locked up until General Curtis LeMay, then the commander of the Strategic Air Command, came to personally escort him home.
Well, after LeMay picked me up and we were flying home, he told me that they weren't through with me. They'll be back. He'll try to cover up as much as he can to help me out, but he said they will return in your life.
The general was right. While still in his high school graduation cap and gown, David Adair was personally handed his draft notice. He would spend the next 8 years in the United States Navy. But in the meantime, the young rocket scientist had seen and touched what he still believes is a symbiotic, perhaps even biological engine of extraterrestrial origin. Could it be that the mysterious craft seen over Area 51 were not recovered at UFO crash sites? Is it possible that our government has been working secretly with an alien civilization? Are we on friendly terms with beings from another planetary system? No one argues the fact that if it's true, Robert Lazar's story that he worked on a full-scale version of this alien craft is probably the most important news story of the last 100 years. And if David Adair's story is true, an even larger and presumably more powerful engine of unknown origin has also been in government possession for at least 30 years. But what about the story behind this supposedly alien technology? How did it come to be in human hands? According to Lazar, during his stay at Area 51, he was given information which, if true, would constitute undeniable proof of intelligent life on other planets. In Lazar's video interview, he claims that while at the super-secret S4 facility, he was shown official briefing documents stating that the beings who gave us the secrets of the flying saucer came from the Zeta Reticuli system, a star system that is 35 light-years from Earth.
The beings are 3 to 4 feet tall and weigh 25 to 50 pounds. They have grayish skin and large heads with almond-shaped wraparound eyes. These beings said that they had been visiting Earth for a long time and presented photographic evidence which they contended was over 10,000 years old. There was an exchange of hardware and information in central Nevada until 1979, at which time there was a conflict which brought the program to an abrupt halt.
Few made the connection at the time, but Lazar's identification of the Zeta Reticuli system appears to corroborate an amazing story told 20 years earlier by Betty Hill, one of the first UFO abductees.
And while Betty was aboard the ship, she was conscious enough to look around and ask questions. And she saw what appeared to be a star map on the wall on the inside of this ship. And she asked who apparently was the leader of the group what it represented. And he says, well, it's our sector of the universe. Well, Betty remembered that, apparently. It was imprinted in her subconscious. And Betty was able to draw a sketch of what she had seen on that star map inside the ship. No one really knew just what it meant, except that a brilliant young woman, an astronomer by the name of Marjorie Fish, looked at it and said, I think I can make some sense out of that. And over the course of about 6 years, Marjorie Fish put together what she thought that map that Betty remembered represented. But on that map were a couple of star systems that were not discovered until the late 60s. Once we made those additional discoveries, the Fish map became very valid. And the place that the captain of the ship told Betty that they were from was a star system that we call Zeta Reticuli.
Could Betty Hill have made all of this up? Did Bob Lazar just pull that name out of a hat? Or are we finally seeing some corroborating evidence of alien visitations, even abductions, tied to Area 51?
That Betty and Barney didn't make it up. Because over the years since, that's a tiny part of a vast amount of evidence that these are real events.
But what of this notion that our government and the aliens have cut some sort of deal? Is such a thing even remotely possible?
It is possible that our governments could cut a deal with an alien world in exchange for the technology that we've gained so rapidly and so quickly. We've given them something else, maybe the ability to come and go from this planet and use it like a gas station to go to other planets. Perhaps they're after resources, the water or the minerals in our planet, or possibly even use us as resources.
The theories and possibilities boggle the mind. Government collusion with alien forces, abductions, engines of enormous power, all hidden by the desert sands of Area 51. Is this the secret the government is so anxious to protect at Groom Lake? Assuming for the moment that all of this is true, what purpose could the government have in mind for all of this technology? Norio Hayakawa doesn't believe these new advances will be used for the betterment of all humankind.
You can rest assured that this technology, one way or the other, is going to be used for some type of military activity. Well, this could be used for a large-scale, unprecedented type of war we have ever seen. These are photos of a secret California facility conducted by Lockheed Corporation. There are several secret air bases in Southern California where they are testing the parts to build some of these this craft objects. And the strange thing about these facilities is that you don't see any aircraft on the runway, no aircraft whatsoever. When this facility was under construction, people near the area have seen rows and rows of cement trucks almost 24 hours a day, continuously, in one cases for several weeks at a time, indicating that a large underground complex was being constructed.
I was fortunate enough to interview people who constructed the underground facility at Area 51. There's research laboratories and things like that under the desert floor, and then the surface was restored to look like it did before.
According to Hayakawa, the security around this facility is as strict as that surrounding Area 51, and the sheer size of each is truly staggering. Even if some secret project of gigantic proportions really is going on underground in California and Nevada, does that mean the technology is being developed for hostile purposes?
I would not be surprised that some abductees are taken to some U.S. underground facilities. And if that is indeed the case, there again, we're dealing with a criminal case here that involves total violation of our constitutional system.
Can these stories actually be true? UFO abductees brought by force to Area 51? Is there any evidence to support these frightening claims? In Robert Lazar's video, he claims that the S4 facility near Area 51 is hidden inside a mountain with 9 giant hangar doors, textured to blend in with surroundings. Incredibly, this matches the description given by some people who claim to have been kidnapped by the occupants of a UFO, then taken to a mysterious underground facility.
Abductees have been taken to places that they have assumed were underground facilities. Abductees have also reported that they have seen what appeared to be U.S. military people involved in their abduction.
Others believe the government is only interested in protecting itself.
They started infiltrating UFO organizations. They spied on UFO researchers. They put out false information to muddy the waters. They actively encouraged this laughter curtain, a policy of ridicule that anyone who sees a UFO is crazy. Well, anyone who sees a UFO is not crazy. That's just the prism through which we view this now. The government's done a very good job of disinformation, of clouding the whole issue.
All the eyewitnesses that said they've seen things flying at Area 51 is easily explained. They're seeing things that are flying there. Research is going on, and they're flying everything from reverse engineering aircraft to a possible extraterrestrial craft coming and going. So these people are not nuts. They are seeing things fly around out there.
It's an underground military presence that is vast. Friends of mine who've been in it have said that it's literally a 40-story building buried underground.
If UFOs are real, the government has perhaps a legitimate interest in avoiding panic and making sure that society does not overreact to this situation. Purportedly, UFOs have been known to the government since the 40s and 50s. During that time, there was a lot of hysteria about communism, about world affairs. If you were to introduce UFOs at that time, perhaps there would be mass hysteria. Perhaps there would be a shaking of the foundations of our society.
They try and cover up stories. They treat the public like it's just not even important. They've got devices sitting in crates that humanity could benefit from. But what do? They sit there and try and figure out how to make a weapon out of it. It's not the right way to go about it.
But those of us who didn't see it firsthand still have to ask, is there any indisputable evidence that alien technology is being tested and used at Area 51? Could it be that locked deep beneath the desert floor, behind the tightest ring of security in our history, there is proof positive of life on other worlds? If that proof is there, it brings up another, even more profound question. Will the world be better off if that startling disclosure is made, and the unexplained becomes the unimaginable?